Good afternoon, welcome, thank you for joining us. This is the work session for Tuesday, February 3rd, 2026 with the Marion City Council. First up on our agenda is an annual presentation by Area Ambulance Service. The chief made the introduction.
Yes, sir.
Welcome, Jennifer.
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. It's my pleasure to introduce Jennifer Peden. Jennifer has presented in years past in the formal role. She is in a new role now, and I'll let her share about that transition that's happening with her team. But I'm looking forward to this presentation today. There's lots of updates that are happening within the EMS program and just further collaboration and partnership to support EMS in Marion. So turn it over to Jen.
Thanks for the introduction.
Welcome back, Jennifer.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Appreciate you having me. I have a lot of great things to share. I want to make sure I leave some time at the end for any questions that you might have, but we'll dive in and get started. So I want to take the opportunity to reiterate who we are. While we've been providing EMS service since 1971 to the region, in January of 2006, these 5 entities came together under 2080 cooperative agreement in order to provide EMS services in the most collaborative, efficient way possible. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, but our charge is to be self-sustaining. We receive no subsidy from any of our partners, no tax subsidy, nothing from the hospitals. So that requires us to be quite an efficient organization. So the important message here is that we are your ambulance service. As the chief mentioned, Keith Rippey was our CEO for 20 years. In July of 2025, he announced his retirement to be effective at the end of the year. So our board of directors got busy evaluating opportunities. And in, September of 2005, they offered the position to me. So while I'm new to the role, I'm not new to Area. I've been at Area for about 20 years. My transition into the CEO role kind of created this cascade behind me. So my former director of operations is now in my role as the VP and COO. And my former compliance manager is in her role as the director of operations. And again, while we're all new to these roles, the team and I have been working together for probably about 15 years or longer. One of the things that we wanted to make sure that we did when we started in these new positions is be clear about our goals and be clear about our priorities as we kind of started to build our own leadership legacy, if you will. What you're seeing here are just the top priorities that we outlined. My team is full of paramedics. They're great paramedics. They also know how to react to emergencies very well. But one of the things that being in the leadership role requires of them is to be proactive and not always reactive. So one of the things that we talk a lot about is how to be strategic thinkers. We want to make sure that we're spending time on those big rock initiatives and not just spending all day putting out those proverbial fires. We also need to make sure that we're staying focused on rebuilding then the bench strength at Area. Communication is always a focus for us, so we wanted to make sure that we stay focused on the communication, closing communication loops consistently, quickly. We knew that it was going to be very important to have transparent communication internally as the leadership changes occurred. So we started hosting internal virtual town halls that have become fairly well attended by our folks. This is a time to bring up any concerns and questions, and a time for the leadership team to just be very transparent again about what we're working on. You'll hear me talk about accountability. That's been a metric that's come to our attention. While I believe that we do fairly well with accountability at Area, that's always a metric that's challenging. So as a leadership team, we wanted to make sure that we're defining that in a positive way, talking about accountability not necessarily being a negative thing, but accountability is really the organization agreeing on a set of standards, agreeing that those standards are important. And when we do accountability, that's really just calling our teammates back to that standard that we've agreed on. Making sure our accountability is immediate, that it's in a supportive manner, but also making sure that we're empowering all of our teammates, the brand newest EMTs, to be able to feel comfortable doing accountability throughout the organization. And the last is to really push against complacency. making sure that we're continuing to seek new ideas, seek out new knowledge. Again, working together for so long, we want to make sure that we don't get over reliant on our past successes, that we continue to be proactive. At the end of the day, our message is we want to be so essential to our communities and our partners that life without area ambulance is simply unthinkable. At Area, we define culture as quite simply the way that we do things around here. The GAP-M is an anonymous survey that we use to check in and see how we're doing with our culture. What you're looking at in the middle of the screen here are our 3 lowest performance metrics. The GAP-M measures 33 culture metrics, measures on a personal level, on a team level, and on a management level. Our lowest score was the 4.67 at the management level with poor performer accountability. Our second was then at that team level. This is more the peer-to-peer accountability, and that was at 4.95. And then this other metric is always a metric that scores fairly low for us because of the way it's worded. It's rating your trust in your lowest trusted teammate, and that came in at a 5.02. I also included the parameters up there so that you can see, while these are our 3 lowest metrics, they're still pretty good. We're still falling in the moderate risk area. What was pretty phenomenal for me to see when we issued this survey in December was that even through that leadership change that we had in our organization, our metrics came back higher than we've ever had. And we've been using this tool for probably 15 years or longer. So culture continues to be something that we stay focused on. Quick operational overview. This slide is showing you our calls for service. We operate on fiscal year July 1 through June. So this is starting in fiscal year 2020, and I extrapolated out through 2026. The blue is our total calls for service throughout our service area, Marion included. And then I did pull out our Marion specific calls. And you can see that great big jump from 2024 to 2025. That has to do with those standalone EDs, and we'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. So in our current fiscal year, we are averaging 85 total calls for service every day, and that results in approximately 64 transports every day. In Marion, that's 17.5 calls for service with 15 transports. These numbers are up. When I stood here last year, it was 11 calls for service with 9 transports. So you folks have gotten a lot busier over here. Those standalone emergency departments, here's kind of that full, I guess, numbers for transports in and out. But the important message here is, on average, Area is transporting 6 patients out of those EDs combined each day. And we're transporting approximately 3 patients into those facilities every day. I wanted to explain a little bit about how a crew decides the destination, transportation destination. Crew shows up on scene, does an assessment, uses their equipment, and determines what the most appropriate destination hospital is. If we're responding to a patient with, say, chest pain, we'll apply that 12 lead, look at that, interpret that, and if it's suspected that that patient's going to need perhaps cath lab services, we will bypass these standalone EDs and go to the main campus, all in an attempt to make sure that each patient gets the most appropriate destination. This slide really showcases the technology behind how we deploy and how we staff our ambulances. What you're looking at is what we call our heat map. This is 7 years of historical data out of our CAD. It tells us the time of day and day of week where these calls are most likely to hit. Each unit is equipped with AVL, GPS, and we do what's called a dynamic deployment. So we post our ambulances based on this demand. And then when a call comes in, the closest unit's sent, and the remaining available units get reposted so that we are constantly anticipating and located at where that next call might be. This is a slide about our response times. So the red box is focusing on our life-threatening emergencies. These are the lights and sirens responses. And we break that down by response zones, so Cedar Rapids, Marion, and Lynn County. We measure our response times fractally, meaning that we don't look at averages. We want to reach all calls for service in that area within 9 minutes or less, all those life-threatening emergencies. And so we want to do it in 90% of the time. We want to make that threshold 90% of the time or better. So in Cedar Rapids, those lights and sirens responses, we're making that 9-minute threshold 91% of the time, 90% in Marion, and 93% in Lynn County. Where we end up hitting a bit of a challenge is those non-life-threatening emergencies. So these are still 911 calls, but they've been deemed non-life-threatening and they don't require a lights and sirens response. So we're responding with traffic, stopping at all the stoplights and running with the heavy traffic in our communities. And so you can see here that we struggle a little bit more. Our P2s in Cedar Rapids were at 89, here in Marion we're at 86, and in Lynn County we're at 91. And again, this threshold is 12 minutes or less. A couple important things to note here is that we've had some pretty significant weather events this year already. There are no exclusions for that. So anytime we've got a weather event and we're struggling to respond, we aren't making an exception. That data is folded in here. Our response time starts from the minute our dispatch center receives that call. So it includes all the call processing times and things like that. We do have a challenge here in the Marion community, as you probably know. Your comm center doesn't have the ability yet to do the EMD, emergency medical dispatch. This is that scripted list of questions that a caller goes through that helps determine the most appropriate level of response for the units. With that missing information, quite a while ago, the chief and I decided that the best way for us to address that is for area to just respond emergently to all of those calls for service. And then once first responders were able to get on scene and determine that maybe a lights and sirens response wasn't required, then we can get downgraded. That gets recoded and shifted over to that P2. So that does have an impact to these response teams as well. One of the things that we've done recently, and by recently I mean just last week, is we've implemented a tracking process for these exceptions. So every time that we don't make that response time threshold, our dispatcher is starting an electronic form with some of the information, filling out the basics. That form gets shifted to the crew that responded. And we're asking basically to identify just any variables that might have came up that you think had an impact on our ability to respond quicker. Our goal here is to really do a deep dive into the data and see if we can't trend and continue to really dial in and get the best response times possible. Most recently this year, we made a pretty significant investment into the community. We have posted a fixed post over on 9th Street. This is what we call post 3. We have leased this monthly for decades. This predates my time at area. But this most recent year, the opportunity to release the building, the owners said that they wanted to sell it. So area went ahead and purchased that building. And then we did have to kind of put some funds into it. There were some unexpected black mold issues with windows, things like that. So it's quite a facility now for us. And then we recently finished the construction on what we call post 7. This is the fixed post next to the Marion ED. We're hoping to host a ribbon cutting maybe in the spring when it gets a little nicer. But this, we just made our last payment on it. It was a $1.3 million investment. So what I wanted to make sure that I was clear on is that these fixed posts did not necessarily impact our operations or posting at all. We had already identified the need to increase the posting priority and the amount of time that we had units posted in Marion. We were just doing that street corner deployment. So these facilities, these fixed posts are really just a nice place for our crews to get out, stretch from the truck, warm up, maybe warm up a meal, things like that. And just a few comments on community partnering. We continue to push in really hard with the community here, making sure that we're building as many bridges as possible. With our Marion Fire Department partners, we've really shifted our focus to sharing as much clinical data as possible. This really will help us continue to deliver the best care, stay focused on patient outcomes, which is what matters at the end of the day. The most recent initiative that I understand is going to be rolling out here in a few weeks is this QR code for feedback. If we respond to a call, Marion Fire provides the first response. We show up, take over care, transport to the hospital, and then a lot of times that's where our knowledge of that patient ends, is at the hospital. What we've learned is that understanding the outcomes is really helpful to us on the front end as we continue to learn how to be good clinicians. And so what the hospitals have provided to us is the ability to scan a QR code and get what we call the rest of the story. And so we're anxious to roll that out and to share that with all of our first responding partners. A while back, we initiated a medication exchange. So if the Marion Fire Department responds and has to crack into their drug box, what we're able to do is exchange the meds that the ambulance has. In the past, what needed to happen was the fire apparatus would have to go all the way down to the main campus hospital to exchange that drug box, get a fresh one, which took the truck and the crew out of your community and out of the system status. So being able to do this drug exchange on scene is helping move meds through the EMS system a lot more efficiently. Area Ambulance donates all of the disposable medical supplies. So again, if we're on a call and the Marion Fire Department uses some of their disposable medical supplies, we'll restock those. The ripple effect of these two initiatives is that once a month, our ambulances will do a station visit. So we'll stop by each of the fire stations and make sure that there's no meds or disposable medical equipment that, or not equipment, supplies, medical supplies that we can exchange out that are going to be soon to expire. So we'll take those back into our inventory so we don't have much waste. But those touch points that we have will just continue to build bridges and cooperative relationships. We staffed approximately 25 public safety standbys. These are those fire standbys, police standbys. We staff those free of charge, want to be close by should any of our partners need help on those calls. And then we continue to work with the Marion Operations Group. These are folks from the fire department, the dispatch center, and area ambulance center to make sure that we're taking those two EMS studies that we did. We're working through the recommendations in both of those and continuing to find areas of improvement. With the city, we're most recently a Marion Chamber member. I think next week I'm presenting to the Winners Circle. This sounds like a pretty fun group of individuals that I get to meet and talk about area ambulance with next week. We do all of the high school standbys for football, your Fireflies and fireworks event. We never struggle to staff that. We always have a lot of people signing up to come staff that for us. Yeah, I think that's about, I think that was it. So that was kind of a quick overview, but I'd be happy to take any questions or Chief if I missed anything. Right, great.
Yeah, available to answer questions, Richard. Go ahead. First of all, thanks for the presentation. I really do appreciate having this information annually, and I appreciate all the partnership opportunities that happen between area ambulance and our public safety departments. I was curious just on the workforce side, how big is your team now, and what challenges do you guys see in workforce? I know we talked a lot about recruitment and retention with fire and police, but also mainly listed on your side.
Sure. Well, first of all, we like to say that we've trained some of your best fire and police members. A lot of them have got their start at area over the years. It's a challenge for sure. One of the things that we started 2.5 years ago is a training center. So the state of Iowa, I think, recognizing the challenge that we have with EMS providers, allowed ambulance services to certify EMTs and advanced EMTs themselves. So rather than have to go through an accredited college program, we're able to do that. So area started a training center. We have a training director who she's got her BSN in nursing, but she also has EMS background, and she has been able to do a couple of academies. So not only are we taking our internal EMTs and advancing them to that advanced EMT level, but we've been able to then cast the net pretty wide, and we've got some grandiose plans about how we can really be a resource in the community for individuals that are maybe underemployed, that would love the opportunity to maybe embark on a career like this, but can't necessarily stop working for 3 to 6 to 9 months to get that certification. We're currently in the final stages of being accredited by the higher education learning body so that we can actually do paramedic certifications as well. And that's very exciting. So we'll continue to look for opportunities to partner with our fire department to maybe help with some of that training and close some of those gaps. So right now we're fully staffed, which is wonderful. I don't want to jinx us. Knock on some wood for me. Thank you. It's always a challenge for us being unsubsidized. We have to really sell our culture. We have to really focus on being an area ambulance medic and having that mean more. Because the reality is my teammates can go down the road to, say, Johnson County, earn more per hour and probably not have to run as many calls on a shift. And so sometimes that gets kind of challenging to work against. But our actual turnover rate is very low. I don't have the number off the top of my head. We do separate that out from what we consider graduating. Like I said, we've graduated plenty of folks into maybe a more what they wanted to do all along, which is perhaps fire or PD or something like that.
Thank you.
So, and we're probably about 85 total, and that's admin and everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the question.
Okay, Councilmember Harper.
I was really intrigued by the heat map that you showed us.
Yeah.
It looks like one sheet that you have, and I'm curious, you know, do you do any data comparison to, I guess, refine the representation of each other's heat maps? That's kind of the techie question I have, and then I've got a simpler one.
You take the techie one, I'll do the simple one.
Okay, all right. So data sharing was one of the recommendations from the EMS studies that we have started down that path, which is more clinical outcome data such as cardiac arrest survivability, which we're excited to bring forward to the council here soon on some of the data that we're seeing in Marion. We haven't been looking at our heat maps on density. What we look at it for is similar to what they look at it for, but there is definitely opportunities for that as we look into the future on what they're seeing and what we're seeing. Yeah, it's definitely an opportunity for us to continue to do more on.
This second question I had, Jennifer, you represented that you have a metric of less than 9 minutes responding for life-threatening conditions, and I think 12 for non-life.
That's correct.
So when a call from a Marion resident is made, I presume that goes to Marion Communications
Yes.
and then is transferred to your dispatch center. What's kind of characterize the interface between the two dispatch centers and the time it takes to do a call passage? I'm just curious about how that works.
Sure, I'll let Chief start.
Yes, so the call is received, and it depends whether if it's in the city of Marion. If it's in the city of Marion, it's received by MCOM. If it's within Marion Township, as a part of our service, it would go to the Lynn County Sheriff's Department's dispatch center. So that call is received. They enter in the call type, which would assign a Marion Fire unit. As a part of that data entry and keystroke, as soon as they assign a unit, there is an interface at area ambulances or CMed dispatch to where they can see that call in their system, and then they mobilize the closest appropriate resource based on the information that was entered by MCOM.
Okay, so basically, the moment we log in, they can see it.
The moment that a unit is assigned based on the call type, yes. So there is a little bit of time in front of that as they're putting the information in, but as soon as the call is entered into the CAD system, there is an interface to where that alerting will pop up within their comm center to let them know that there's a call.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I would add too that because of some of the radio work that we've done, making sure that we are utilizing those radio frequencies to the best of our ability. A lot of times our crews will what we call pre-alert. So we'll hear MCOM start whatever fire And they know then, that's gonna be our call, and then we can either start moving to the unit or get the unit in motion towards that address. So a lot of times our unit might even be moving before they get the formal dispatch from our comm center.
Thanks.
Thank you. If you think it looks cool on the screen, you should come over, come visit. We'll give you a tour and you can see the comm center. It's pretty cool to see in action.
Well,
Great on.
I had the tour not very long ago,
Yeah,
and
thank
it was very interesting, and it's really educational. You should meet all the puppies that are running down.
Did you have?
It really was, very useful, so thank you for giving me that tour. Councilmember Jensen?
Yeah, Jennifer, I certainly do see some positive changes in direction, that you've outlined, so we appreciate your presentation. So it looks like the total transports in Marion have gone up 40%
Mhm.
from fiscal 25 to 24, obviously driven by the two ERs.
Right.
So we knew that was gonna have an increase, we just didn't know how much. And now you also have, you've always been on 9th Street, but now you have the facility out there next to, as you showed next to the Mercy ER.
Correct.
So how is that playing in your 9-minute timing? Is having that facility? I'm assuming it's not just a place for them to go rest and warm up. So describe how that is gonna be utilized in maybe bettering that 9-minute time and the 12-minute times and improving on those percentages.
Sure. So it's a little, to be honest, having those fixed posts aren't going to improve response times. We really do street corner deployment a lot. So whether we have a building sitting there or whether our CAD and our AI tells us we are posting, maybe it's in a Walgreens parking lot or the Hy-Vee parking lot, wherever that time of day, day of week tells us, hey, here's the hot spot, here's where the next call is likely to drop. That's where we're going to sit and post and wait. When I stood up here last year, I made a commitment to improve response times, and we have improved response times here in Marion. And one of the ways that we did that was before we even had that post built, before we did any of that, we were reprioritizing our posting algorithm so that we were adding more posted hours in this community for that reason. So we saw those improvements prior to them finishing the building. I think the building is more for our folks to have that permanency. They can get out, they can relax when the call volume's lower.
Okay.
When the call volume's busy, that's when we're in the truck and we're sitting on the street corner.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question.
Anyone else? Thank you very much.
Thank you for the
Thank you for the
time.
partnership and the collaboration.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
See you next year. Yeah.
All right, our next item is a discussion regarding regulations for e-bikes and electric scooters on city trails and sidewalks. Chief Sprague.
Hello, Mayor and Council. If you remember last fall, we had some discussion about e-bikes, and so we're coming back to you with some recommendations. We're looking for some discussion and some direction on what you would like to see in the e-bikes regulation that we have proposed here. So some goals for the e-bikes is regulation is just to first acknowledge that they're here and they're actually very useful to various members of the community. We wanted to keep the city code simple and easy. The state code can be pretty hard to understand sometimes in reference to e-bikes. The big driving force is safety for all of our the users and especially our children, the school children that use them on a regular basis to ride to and from school. So we want to provide some clear rules for the city code and for enforcement. So in Iowa code, it already has stated that there's 750 watts of motor power or less is available to be used. What we are proposing here in the city is not to replace that, but to just kind of add on to the Iowa code to make it easier for us to enforce and make it simpler for the public to understand. That on sidewalks, that there be a 10-mile-an-hour maximum speed of e-bikes. On roadways, they could use the bike lane or the roadway, they just have to follow traffic laws just like a normal bicycle would. And then on the trails, having a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit and have to yield to pedestrians. Looked at some comparables. Cedar Rapids doesn't have any speed limit. Lynn County Conservation doesn't have any speed limit on their trails. Ames, Iowa has a 10 mile an hour speed limit. They were kind of the same problem that I think many agencies are across the country, is how do we help manage these issues? I wanted to provide just some calls for service from the police department related to our trails. So our bike trails were 55%, or bike related calls 55%, and trails were 50 or 45%. The most type of call types was usually juvenile trouble. We had some extra patrol, suspicious activity, several medical calls, and some found property. As you can see, this is just a graph of the call volume. Juvenile trouble was the most out of all those. Directed patrol was typically on there was when we provided somebody either downtown or the uptown to provide some walking enforcement there. If you look at the call volume by month, July and October were our biggest months. Obviously, the winter months, not so much. So we're trying to hopefully get this before April. We can maybe get some good information out there to the public. Talk about some peak months and then peak times of day. Obviously, afternoon is the biggest, followed by the evening. And then morning was not as much, or late night. The biggest issues were really around Thomas Park. We had primarily trail-related calls, Boyson Park, Linmore High School, and then Butterfield Park. Were kind of the target areas of where our calls were coming from. This is just kind of an overview of the Iowa code. They talk about that maximum 750 watts. There's those class 1, class 2, and class 3. Those are very, you have to kind of read the code probably several times to kind of understand exactly which one's which. So I have on here a picture of an electric dirt bike. It does not have any pedals, and when it doesn't have any pedals, it's not legal in the state of Iowa. So you have up there, you have the library trike, electric trike, that's legal, as well as this other one, it's a 750 watt or less. But you can see they have that max speed assist on there. Typically, the state law has, they require that there's a sticker placed in the front of the bike, so it's easy to kind of classify which class it's in. However, I don't know if I've seen a sticker on one of these bikes yet. And these bikes come from various manufacturers from all over the world. So I don't think that they're really following Iowa law and having these stickers on there. But the important thing is having pedals and having that wattage of 750 watts or less. They also classify an electric personal assisted mobility device. And this is what you would think of a Segway. It's a heavy 2-wheel device, and the state law requires that to be 16 years of age to ride those. But they can be operated on both sidewalks and bikeways. You don't have to have a driver's license. Yeah, but that was kind of a response to the Segways when they came out. So that small scooter up there at the top, that still would not be under this code section. So you wouldn't have to be 16 because it's a small lightweight device. We talk about safety requirements in the state law about yielding the right of way to pedestrians, using the audible signal before overtaking or passing somebody. They also talk about these devices like the Segway need to have a front headlight and a rear facing reflector. I don't think I've seen any Segways around, but they are out there, and there's different varieties of those. The new ordinance that we are looking at would be some definitions here of a bicycle, stand-up scooter, motorized vehicle, and the shared use path. So the stand-up scooter is a lightweight 2 or 3 wheel electric or manual. A motorized vehicle, we would define that as something that has the internal combustion engine, whether gasoline. We would actually just ban those from all trails. So prohibition is no gas powered vehicles on the sidewalks, bike lanes, or bike paths. These including dirt bikes, ATVs, gas scooters. So I have some pictures up here of those type of things. These are quite a bit of, I would say, quite a bit of our complaints from people riding these gas powered mini cycles or scooters around. This would help us to be able to enforce that rule. Riding on sidewalks. In the business district, we'd still maintain that no riding to walk your bike. We're also clarifying, giving the audible signal to pedestrians when passing, and then the new change would be the 10-mile-an-hour speed limit or the slow to a walking pace when it's a crowded area. The shared use paths or the trails be a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit, again, yielding to pedestrians. We've talked about signage as well to help improve information on the speed limit as well as just trail etiquette. So I'd say most of what we're seeing is just lack of trail etiquette. Roadways. Similar to what's for a bicycle, they can still ride on the bikes or ride their e-bikes on the roadways. They have to follow the laws of the road. They can't impede traffic. They can use bike lanes as well. So in summary, anything over 750 watts is considered a motor vehicle, needs to be registered. So some of these e-bikes are over that, or things that don't have the pedals on there. Max speed limit for sidewalks would be 10 miles an hour. Roadways just have to follow traffic laws. And then the bike path and trails would be 15 miles an hour. What that would help us do is it would we're aligning with Iowa code as well as provide some additional things such as the speed limit to help for us with enforcement. We wanted to promote safety and clarity to the public and help them understand what's expected. And so some things that we would do, provide some publication from Marion Messenger. We know that's one of the most important or visible items out there. Partner with the schools, provide some school education so kids know what's allowed, what's not allowed. And partner with our other the trail associations, the bike associations, and then increase that trail signage. Some enforcement opportunities for us is our plan is to put the bike patrol back together, put officers back on the street or back on the bike trails, just help, especially with education and providing that type of enforcement. Focus on some of those high areas of call volume that we've identified, focus on those trails. And again, the first step would be to provide the education out there to the public. That would be it.
Thank you.
No questions? Discussion, or not discussion, I guess, questions?
Go ahead. Chief, you mentioned that bicycles and e-bikes, 750 watts or greater have to be registered. What's that registration and where is that administered?
That would be a motor vehicle registration, just like you would a motorcycle.
Okay, that's handy to know. Okay, what about, I think what's come to me more are the e-scooters, complaints and concerns about those. Do the e-scooters, and I'm a little fuzzy on this, and so sorry if I missed it. Are they in scope for this ordinance?
Yes, so those lightweight scooters that the kids ride, yes, they would be.
Okay, all right, good. And your comments about working through the schools and other points of contact relative to a PR campaign, I think is about only solution really to try to modify behaviors of these things. So I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councilmember Brand.
Hey, Chief. So just to clarify, because at one point we were talking about the different classes, the 1, 2, and 3, and maybe only allowing class 1, 2, whatever, like I'm getting exactly, but just to clarify, there is no limitation on what class could be on the trails. It's just the speed.
Correct.
You could have a class 3 that goes a lot faster, but they just have to keep it.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, because the class 3 could go 20 miles an hour with pedal assist, and instead of trying to figure out the classes, we just set one speed.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Councilmember Jensen.
So Chief, everything you outlined makes a lot of sense. As I was listening to all of that, the key was gonna come back to, well, how do you enforce it? How do you stop it? How do you slow them down? And obviously with your patrol cars on the streets, if people see another patrol car, they're gonna be slowing down. So the reestablishing the bicycle patrol officers makes a lot of sense. But how long has it been since we've had those? And how do you see those functioning? From the standpoint of how often they're gonna be out, you're looking at just the peak times of the year, of the day, I mean, how are they gonna be utilized?
Well, Officer Dobbs still rides his bike.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
He's been there in the past.
He has the only working bike right now. We do have a supply of bikes that we'll just need
Okay,
to get out and fix up to get them ready to go. With our staffing coming back up to almost full staffing, our plan is to allow the officers, when we have enough options on the street, that they could throw a bike rack on one of the patrol cars and in their tours, stop at a trail and take some time doing some bike trails. So that's kind of how we're looking at doing that. If we have some target areas, like we look at those target times, those target areas and get officers out on the bikes during those times.
and it seems to me that is probably gonna be your most effective way, because by the time you get complaints, obviously you're never gonna catch anybody, those are just way after the fact. So it's just a matter of them knowing that they may come upon an officer on a trail at any time, and that chance is there, just like driving in the street, so to me, that does make a lot of sense to me.
Councilmember Benson?
Thank you, Chief, and thank you for your research and work on this. I know it's a lot, and there's no perfect answer to any of this, and we've talked a little bit about it after it was brought up. I think we all hear different complaints or had different experiences ourselves with e-bikes on trails or others that maybe aren't using good trail etiquette, which is unfortunate. So I appreciate you looking into this, and I think this is a good place to start, especially with some of the education on what that etiquette is and what is allowed, because how does the patrol officer, if they're on the trail, are they gonna come, they know it's 10 miles an hour, I mean, are you literally
Well,
15 or?
so we could use handheld radar. My goal is not to be doing that. My goal is just to have our officers proactively out there looking for that dangerous behavior. But we would have that in our back pocket if we said we needed to resort to that. But the education piece is gonna be the big piece of what this enforcement's for.
I think we appreciate it as a community, understand that some people do rely on the motorized ability of these bikes, especially to get around this capability issue, but also we have had, I know we traveled, we had to take an international trip a couple years ago, and we were in the bike capital of the world in the Netherlands, and there was to say to our Uber driver, as these bikes are flying all over different lanes, like, what are you doing about e-bikes here? Said, we don't know. It's a big conversation at state national levels. We are trying to figure out how to handle it. So appreciate you doing that. I think it's a good place to start, and I hope that we'll just have a review time on this. So I'm assuming we'll have like a month or 1 year, end of summer type of update on folks are what we've observed.
Yeah, yeah, and just a shout out to Kara and Seth. It was a partnership of trying to put this together.
So we're looking for direction on whether or not this is the right direction, or
Correct.
any objections to any of this, or any strong feelings if this is not the right direction? Okay, so what's next on this? We'll bring it back at some point for
Yes, we'll bring it back.
actual ordinance.
Yes, we'll work with Kara to kind of get this finalized and bring it back for you.
Okay, as Sarah said, we have to start somewhere, and it's a good start, and just refine it as we need to, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for everyone working on it. Next item is Seth Stashel with the discussion and direction regarding parks and rec fees.
Mayor, council, this is the follow-up from last December, came before you to present discussion for some park fees. Again, these are things that would be recommended to take effect March 1st, if it is council is good with the changes. Wanted to discuss pool rentals. so we are not moving forward with any of the pool fees, but one fee that we did want to bring forward is just the pool rentals. These are private rentals that people can rent out the whole facility after hours. And so really, from a staffing side of things, we're just wanting to try to keep the subsidies from paying for private rentals. And so we're recommending that change to be 350, which is $100 increase from the 250 that we've been charging. We did hear back from the pavilion rentals that the concern was just offering half days or just offering full days for everything. We're recommending a hybrid change for that. Essentially, when we're offering half days, we have staff and it's a 1 hour turnaround, and it's nearly impossible for staff to get each pavilions turned around in each one of those parks. So without having more staffing during those times, we're recommending a hybrid change. Thomas Park is our most popular park. It's over 50% of our rentals. It has all the amenities, the splash pad, the playgrounds. It has 3 pavilions there. So we're recommending with the model where we're doing having a half day options at Thomas Park, but moving all our neighborhood parks, Hannah, Lau, all the neighborhood parks to full day rentals just to be able to have that capacity. That change is really showing here where the large pavilions, and those are Lau Park and Hannah, which just came online last year at 150 for all day, and then the small pavilions, which we're seeing an increase at Prairie Hill Park. That's also including the other neighborhood parks at $60, and then the Thomas Park pavilions will keep with the same current model. And then bringing back the 7th Avenue street closure fee. This was one that there was some questions on. Just from a clarity, what we're proposing is $1,000. And really, this is taking into account the staffing. These are fixed times for public works. So this is before them placing the 48-hour signs ahead of time, setting the barricades, the road signs. So this does not take into account their equipment being there, because sometimes we do ask for national security to come in, or even with the street closure barricades that we're looking at in CIP, this would is really the staff time for that. It doesn't take into account all the additional utilities or anything for the street. Again, as a reminder, we don't charge anything for our partners and Chamber Uptown or those Medco festivals. Barbecue Rendezvous, that would be a 50%, so this would be a $500 fee. And then if there's any private parties or commercial filming, this is where that full fee would apply. And then these are the other proposed changes. Didn't hear really any comments from council last time, but still wanted to present them up there. This was adding replacement plaques for $25. The depot rental was something that's new, that $200 rate. Thomas Park Safe Room, we're adding nonprofit rates for weeknights, and then just removing the supplies at the A&E, as it's just already into those fee structures. Any questions or comments on?
Is there more?
This is it.
Questions? None? No questions?
All right, thank you.
You're the expert, so. Thanks, Seth. Okay, our next item is sidewalk inspection.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna introduce Taylor here. I won't take any of his presentation away from him, but he did start as summer help doing the actual inspection, so he has a little bit of history on this program, so he's gonna talk about proposed changes to it.
Thanks, Mike. Welcome, Taylor.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Taylor Chittick. I'm a project engineer in the Public Works Department. And I'm here to discuss modifying the sidewalk inspection program to be more compliant with state legislature. Our recommendation is to modify the process to inspect 1/4 of Marion every year rather than 1/2 of Marion every other year in order to be more compliant with state legislature. And this will also make the project more manageable for both city staff and city hired contractor. And this will keep a contractor on call for any change orders for defective sidewalk panels that are found in other areas over the calendar year. Currently, city staff inspects 1/2 of Marion every 2 years, alternating north and south. The entire city gets inspected over a 4-year period. Typically, this is done by our summer engineering interns. However, depending on timing, it will be full-time staff. Every sidewalk in the city gets walked and is determined if it's defective per a predetermined list of 7 repair codes. After determining that the sidewalk is defective, the sidewalk is marked with pink paint and the homeowner is notified of the repair and notified that they're responsible for the repair. Our processes remain the same for quite some time and needs a little bit of a refresh given new state legislature. Previously, all liability of sidewalk violations was put on the homeowner, assuming that the city maintained its sidewalk inspection program. However, new findings of state legislature opens up shared liability between the city and the property owner if the city is made aware of a defect and it is not promptly fixed. It is in our best interest to modify this process to repair our defects as quickly as possible, reducing our potential for liability. With the city recommending turning this into a project versus just a program, this will make us more consistent with some of our comparable cities, as well as giving the residents opportunities to include themselves in this program, which will open up group pricing, which could potentially reduce the overall cost for our residents. Here are 3 examples of defective sidewalks within our city. The repair codes are noted in the bottom left. These are just 3 of the 7 examples. The current program schedule allows for a late May, early June inspection period, where after we inspect the sidewalk, the homeowner is notified and given until mid-May to complete the repair by either themselves or their hired contractor. After this mid-August deadline, applicable extensions and legal action will follow depending on case by case. The proposed program maintains the same late May, early June inspection period, after which the homeowner will receive notice and will be given 30 days to complete the repair on their own by either themselves or their hired contractor. After this 30-day window, the location will be automatically included into a city-led project where we will bid a project and have a city selected contractor come through and complete all remaining repairs over the next calendar year. The contractor will have until May 31st of the following year to complete these repairs. After the individual repairs are completed, the individual homeowner will be invoiced for their individual portion of the overall project. As I mentioned before, the proposed program is to switch from 1/2 every 2 years to 1/4 every year, to make the project more manageable for both city staff and the selected contractor. This also will keep the contractor on call to change order in any additional sidewalk defects on a case-by-case basis found in any of the other 3 quadrants over the year, to help reduce our overall liability. And the benefits of this process could be group pricing for our residents using the unit pricing through the bid process, an alternative method of payment if funding is not immediately available through the after the invoice is there, they can go and pay through the assessment process. Simplicity of just paying an invoice The resident wouldn't have to track down their own contractor. They'd be able to just pay the invoice that the city would send them, as well as reducing potential liability by eliminating defects for both the city and in turn the resident on the property that's getting fixed. If in support of this, then we will plan to bring back for consideration in the future on the February 19th agenda. Here for any questions you may have.
Great. Did a good job.
Thank you.
I just have one clarification that I didn't register somehow. You described a distinction between treating it as a project and a program. What was that distinction? I didn't.
So what I meant by that is before being a program, we would just go out and mark the violations. And then after that, we would tell the resident to complete the repair. We would not necessarily have any projects tied to it. The project portion would be the city bid project that would that we would manage, that would ensure that the project gets completed by May 31st of the following year. Yeah.
Thanks for clarifying that. Questions? Go ahead.
Taylor, nice presentation. I appreciate it. So a resident could just make a very quick decision. City, just do it. They don't have to have any waiting time, none of that. They can just upfront decide, please add this to your project list and build it. It could be that simple.
That's actually the default. So if they don't want that, they have to let us know.
Okay. I think that's even better. Thank you.
Okay, Deputy City Manager has a comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, by doing the sidewalk program / replacement, as Taylor shares with us tonight, is that this is actually a benefit to the residents as a whole, because what we've discovered when it's been the single sections that we're finding from our residents, that it's hard for them, one, to find a contractor, and two, it costs so much because they're mobilizing and so what could be a $400 expense under a program that we would put together, for them, it could be $800 individually. So this really is a huge benefit to our residents as a whole.
Councilman Jim.
My question is, regards to, reporting, damaged sidewalks. I know cities like, Des Moines have Des Moines reports where you see what sidewalk, you take a picture and it goes to public services and they know something's wrong in that section. Do we have anything like that in Marion?
At one time, we did have an app, but currently it's on a complaint basis or would be by the quadrant. So we have had people before that call in and say, at this address, there's sidewalk that's busted up, and so we would just send staff out to go assess whether that's a violation or not.
That is something we want to look at to cut time in staff going out every quarter to look at those.
Yeah, we can certainly look into it.
Thanks for the presentation. One thing I just really generally am a fan of is us thinking about more of these processes in the quadrant phase, so I think it makes sense and is providing opportunities for more efficiencies. How much, I know Kim was kind of talking a little bit about the price range, but in general, on average, what's percentage of cost we think this will save that?
We can kind of guess, because we don't have hard facts, but I can tell you, I've had people that have called and said, contractor's gonna charge me $400 per panel to fix it. Some would have done it themselves, they could mud jack, or they could cut it, or we would just come in and replace it. So it's a hard number to give an exact number to. And they still have that option. If they're a contractor and they feel they can do it for less money, they can certainly do it themselves too.
We don't have like a percentage range though. That's something that'd be good to know as we keep up with this, what the stats become, that'd be really helpful in the future.
And then the only other point I want to point out is in the resident survey that we just went over at the last council meeting, sidewalk repair was one of those things that we ranked lower on. So this is helping to address that as well.
Okay, Councilmember Grant.
Timing, so with the proposal, it would be completed within a year. Is that, I assume that falls into the timeframe that you had mentioned that the state has for requirements for liability? Because you said something about with being done within I forget exactly what you said, like reasonable time. 1 year is a reasonable time?
I'll defer to legal on that.
Seems long.
Based on how we're doing this, that would be reasonable because we're adding it to a project we already have, and it wouldn't necessarily be reasonable for us to go out and do things immediately. If it were an extreme case where we anticipated some sort of impending harm, or if it was in our uptown where there's a lot of traffic, then I would recommend we move faster on that. But I think that this would fall under reasonable, and this is very consistent with what programs look like in our comparable cities.
Sure, okay. So it's every year there's gonna be this program, and what quadrant is gonna be for the next year, but it's not. So it's just an ongoing every year. And
Anyone else? Well, you're looking for direction on whether or not this is the right direction or, okay,
Yeah, if you're in support and you don't have any changes, then we will bring it back to council for consideration.
okay. Anyone have any thoughts on any changes to this? Okay, I think you have the consensus. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next is our agenda review. We have one item that is marked by staff for discussion. We'll take that item and then we'll come back with any other questions on the rest of the agenda. This is on page 6 of tonight's agenda. Resolution approving memorandum of understanding regarding the Cedar Rapids, Loudoun County Solid Waste Agency to establish specific conditions and requirements that must be met for the city of Marion to consider a limited expansion of a landfill at County Memorial. We have our city manager ready to present.
Mayor, council, thank you. Yeah, this is the complex issue that's got quite a past. Back in 2006, there was a settlement agreement that was established that established kind of what the landfill would look like in terms of setbacks. There's a graphic on this slide. You can see in black. I don't know if it shows up clearly, but the negotiated setback is 1,800 feet. And that was established back in 2006, January 26th of 2006. And so what it did was it established this setback and then also indicated that the agency would go out and look at alternative technologies for diversion strategies. Well, our region has been decimated by natural disasters, most recently the derecho, which has caused the landfill to fill up quicker than originally anticipated. And so with that in mind, we were approached by members of the agency asking about what was our plan going to be when the landfill closed. And as part of that conversation, one of the things that really struck us was that the agency board itself was set to dissolve June 30th of 2044, meaning that there would be no agency to represent or help coordinate waste handling and any sort of diversion strategies for our county. So if the landfill shut down, that agency would dissolve. And so that's why this memorandum of understanding really kind of took center stage, and we started to craft that and work with our partners in the region on this. And just really clearly, this action, this MOU before council does not authorize the expansion. Be clear, it's not proposing the expansion of the landfill. What it does is it establishes a pathway for regional collaboration to come together and research and understand best practices for an entity, the governing board of the agency that would be representative of the entire county, So the first thing that this would do, first and foremost, would establish a working group. There's a list of members in your packet. Per the MOU, if the council approves it and the other agencies approve it, the Lane County would be the one that would appoint that working group. And their charge would be to go out, look at best practices across the country or governing structure for agencies similar to ours, and look at what does it look like? How does it become representative? How can it be representative of the county? Look at metrics for waste diversion. What would those milestones be? What are strategies and tactics? Providing more specificity to the intent of what that settlement agreement was back in 2006. So first and foremost, it does not expand the landfill. The most important thing that it does is it establishes a working group to do the research, to then continue the conversation. If the working group develops the recommendations, and if those recommendations are approved to the satisfaction of all the entities, including this body here, there's establishment of OSV. If after all of that, then the Marion City Council would be asked to consider a limited expansion of the setback by 450 feet. That's a high level summary. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions. But again, to be clear, this action does not expand the landfill. All it simply does, the first thing that it does is establishes a work group, collaborative work group to research national best practices for the purpose of looking at a governance structure.
Hey, thank you. Questions? Go ahead, Councilmember Mentor.
Brian, what is the timeframe that has been thought about or explored with, since there's so many different government entities involved in this discussion, even putting together a working group to have a discussion? Has there been any type of forecast as to when we expect to hear something back?
It's a pretty aggressive timeline. February 27th is the date that's put in the MOU. Lynn County and Cedar Rapids will be considering this MOU next week. Lynn County would be establishing, if all the entities approve the MOU, Lynn County would be working to establish that working group, and then we get up and running. But February 27th is the date that those recommendations, the work of the working group would be targeted to be completed.
Okay, and then for a recommendation.
Correct.
Beyond, they make a recommendation, and how that all expands, is this a months-long process or a years-long process?
That's yet to be seen, but we would work quickly to establish a realistic timeline on that.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I really appreciate the lead that the members of Team Marion have taken on this initiative, not just for our city, but the region as a whole. I truly believe this is probably one of the most important exercises of regionalism in practice that we have in front of us as a community, as all of our community within the county. I also obviously thank our partners at Lynn County and Cedar Rapids for the work that they've put in so far. I'm highly supportive of this process, and I'm looking forward to seeing the working group get to work and see what comes of it. Because like I said, I truly believe this is truly regionalism in practice, and I think that this sets up the long-term solution that this can set up is super essential to avoid future crises with natural disasters that we don't know when and where they're coming, but also in summaries, regardless, will save our residents money long term as well.
Okay, Councilmember Piper.
Yeah, Ryan, you mentioned the first, I guess, element of all of this is to get the working group put in place. And the working group has a rather broad remit of things that they need to look into and then define. But ultimately, that work gets manifested upon approval by all of the stakeholders, that work gets manifested into a new expanded board of directors for the agency. And that group will have to undertake some very aggressive actions in order to look at not only current practices, and, you know, diversion is underway right now actively at the landfill. There may be other things that we don't have visibility to, but the examination of here and now, as well as emerging technologies, will also be on the doorstep for the new agency board. And when you take a look at how new technologies, new techniques, new approaches to waste management get adopted, 2036 is not that far in front of us. And so there will be a natural urgency to be examining all manner of opportunities to lessen demand on the landfill. So there's a much more complete, much more robust set of issues that ultimately the new agency board is going to have to aggressively work on. And that's really the end goal here, is to supercharge the effort here in the short term to benefit the longer term. So I guess that wasn't a question.
Well, if I can add to that, Mayor. You're absolutely correct, and that's enumerated in the working group mandate is spelled out in the MOU, specifically on page 3. And what it does is it speaks to the governing board, whatever is recommended, would be looking at planning, operational metrics for gross tonnage, diversion, recycling, other national best practice metrics for waste management and recycling, integrated solid waste management plan, waste diversion goals, measurable milestones, establishment of a work plan and goals to promote continuous evaluation of technologies and strategies to reduce the rate of capacity consumption. So everything you just articulated is referenced in there. It's clear. You know, and I think that for those that might be watching at home or in the audience, for context, the agency board right now is comprised of really 3 entities. That's Cedar Rapids, Lynn County, and Marion. And the various seats differ. So this agency provides the handling of waste for the entire region, but there's only 3 entities represented. So the idea is if it's more representative of the entire region, well, those other communities are going to have a stake in this and have a stake in how this gets managed moving forward. Because some of the analysis that the subcommittee that the city council appointed, I think it was at the beginning of 2025, when we looked at it, if this shuts down, we have to go to a transfer station, the rates increase significantly to not just Marion residents, but also to the residents in the region. So that's, you know, it's not just the rates for handling refuse and recycling, but it's also how do you fund programs that our residents rely on. So kind of looking big picture, long term, and making sure that we have specificity in this that really speaks to the intent of the original settlement agreement.
Councilmember Jensen?
Yeah, one of the major drivers for me in supporting this MOU is the need to increase our effort in looking at alternative technologies. This was a key area in the original agreement 20 years ago, and everybody felt that that was an important area to focus on. If we look what has happened in the last 20 years and what this current governance situation and structure has accomplished in 20 years, it's very minimal. In fact, it's really a glaring shortcoming of the current board and the governance structure that is in place. So that is exactly why we need to think about moving forward, making changes, so that in the next 10 to 16 years, when we look at what has happened, the changes will occur. in a faster pace than they have in the last 20 years. When we look at alternative technologies, they're not gonna be quick to implement. It's gonna take a while to evaluate them. I wouldn't be surprised if they will not, because of the cost, future cost of those to put into place, probably will incur, or may involve a number of counties, not just Lynn counties. So probably a multi-county approach needs to be considered. So if I look at just that area alone and the shortcomings that's happened for the last 20 years, I think we've got to make changes. I support the MOU to put those changes in place and support everything that's in. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess from my perspective, I'm also in support. I want to acknowledge our city manager, our city team, for really seeing the big picture, seeing the challenge that the whole region is going to be dealing with, which is also going to impact Marion's residents, Marion's businesses, and for taking a leadership role, stepping forward and offering a path to at least finding a solution. This MOU really creates a pathway to putting things back to the original date that the landfill would fill up, which is 2044, giving the region a little bit more time to reconfigure how this thing is managed, to put together a new structure and to create more a more clear pathway to putting together a plan, a long-term plan, so that we're not caught at the end of the life of the landfill without a plan. And the collaborative, more representative approach, we should all be working on this together. I think is the right approach. It is a regional issue and it should be approached regionally. We're again, as our city manager said, this does not obligate Marion to do anything, but it creates the opportunity if the right conditions are in place for our city council to agree to a very limited expansion that would again provide a little more time for the region to work on solutions that are in the interest of everyone in this region. So thank you, Ryan. Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
All right, we'll take questions on any other item on the agenda for Thursday. Anything else on the agenda that we need to discuss or anyone has questions on? Okay. Being that there are no questions, this will bring us to the end of the work session. Thank you all for joining us. We'll see you on Thursday.